shaking.
Post-punk is such a tired sport, the ghost of the dead horse looking down upon us and shaking its dismayed, long-shaped head. In my review of both Shame and Viagra Boys, I explained the concept of post-punk landfill, and doesn't that sting, that a genre that lends itself so openly to creativity ends up sporting a million band that copied from the same notebook. I can't be a mopey ass about it, but when I see a band whose primary genre is post-punk, my brain switches off. Those two hyphenated words give me the same joy as a zoo's insect enclosure, or watching MASH. It doesn't mean good post-punk can't exist, but it does mean that a lot of not good post-punk does exist. And while Lines Redacted by the Leeds post-punk band Mush isn't a poor effort, it's certainly a bore effort, a far cry from the levels of being a raw effort, score effort, or Richie McCaw effort. The conflict is that they seem well aware of this, but a comic telling bad jokes, knowing that they're bad jokes, should know that after many hours of telling the bad jokes, the audience may come to realize that all they've been hearing is bad jokes. With a steady city walk pace and decently thought out guitar melodies, it sounds like post-punk distilled to its most obvious form. If you told Gang of Four to calm down, or gave The Fall a bubble bath, or somebody's sarcastic impersonation of a Parquet Courts LP. In a way, this is funny on its own, but then Bullwinkle J. Moose comes in and starts taking the mickey!
Get no caught in the wet cement. As farming to sister permit.
I have to respect the approach, honestly. I think it's Mush's way of penetrating the lifeless air with something so inconceivably class clown. So every buzz phrase that they spout out like clap 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 positivity or drink the bleach is flogged of its original context and left to do the walk of shame. Except it doesn't feel much shame, just a slight breeze on its untrimmed arse cheeks. Lines Redacted intends on keeping this very obvious gag going for 12 stupid tracks, which would have made for an entertaining album if musically it didn't channel the liveliness of a pavement design textbook. Really, it's only for those whose patience with UK post-punk isn't already wearing thin, because a band whose modus operandi is to only action the bare minimum aren't ever going to go above and beyond, even when they do some jam band instrumentals like Morph or Lines Are Discontinued, where the band still commits to the one gag of doing fuck all. My concerns about post-punk landfill doesn't really apply to Mush. I think they're well aware of what mischief that they're up to. My take is that their mischief is a bit of a bloody snore. It's been nearly 4 years since my mind was blown by Blanck Mass's World Eater, which still shuts me the hell up in awe when I listen to it today. An album that loves noise but understands space, and has the cannibalistic planet Earth in its scope before it imagines us being so encompassed with greed that we eat ourselves out of existence. The so-called crests of Blanck Mass's albums are when we get washed with what can easily be described as tidal waves of sound, raging synths, maybe even some distorted gnashing or some screams, like monsters trying to shake out of the frigid cage of noise, oh my. A couple years later came Animated Violence Mild, which hammers you with these overload moments so often that it's overwhelming, like having some sour candy, only to realize that it's so sour it permanently leaves your face screwed up. The album seemed pretty on the nose with its concept, which is why it comes as a surprise that a couple more years later comes Inferno, an album that tosses you into dusty black space, offers only 2 long tracks, and refuses any but one cresting moment within the first 5 minutes. Yeah, sorry, spoiler alert, but Inferno isn't infernal in the typical fiery sense that they show you in the cartoons. Instead, it creates the sense of rotting away over time, and by time, I definitely mean time. This album will make you check the time, very often, setting new records for how long that you can wait until the album decides to stop doing one thing again and again, and start doing something else again and again. It's a bit of a patience test, but the emphasis does come upon the word test, as if to question how much of a satisfying climax that you truly deserve. So after what feels like 8 years of loud synth arpeggios, it plays nice and then blows your mind, with one of those neat cresting moments that I mentioned earlier, and then settles down into 8 more years of Laundromat field recordings. They eventually build cleverly into a more deliberate ambient dronescape before Blanck Mass show off the stairs to heaven, and then collapse them while you're climbing them, and then force you to fall into a pit of industrial factory noise, drills and clatters and all of that. And it carries on even through the end of phase 1, smoothly surfing right into phase 2, with even more noise, dronescapes, and then the kind of finale that makes you throw your hands up into the air like Teo Cruz in 2010 and wonder why you even bothered tuning in. Phase 2 ends with a beautiful piano outro, but it's so at odds with the very uncomfortable and emotionless soundtrack before it. So, a resolution better suited to Windows startup music than Blanck Mass's existentially troubling vision of planet Earth definitely seems a bit false, like you're going to wake up to find that all this new peace was just a dream. I wouldn't shake the idea because it's preluded by 31 cold minutes of sleep paralysis.